me like I do, and hold 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 me.
Hey, how are you? Good to see you. Happy Monday night. Hey, preschool granny. Good to see you, babe. Good to see you, Shay. Welcome in, welcome in, welcome in. I'm glad you guys are here. All right. So tonight, what I wanted to do is go through some of the Todd Mullis original hearing that took place back in 2019. Okay. He was convicted then of first-degree murder, and he was sentenced to life without the possibility of parole. Hey, Penelope, good to see you. And so over the course of the last, 2020, 2021, 22, 23, 24, 26 years, he has gotten new defense counsel. He is appealing his conviction. And hey, Clicker, good to see you. Also, Clicker, thank you, by the way. I appreciate that very much. So he's appealed his conviction. And there were a couple of issues that I had during the trial that gave me pause. Okay. And unfortunately, it might be on Court TV. I know that it's definitely on my channel. I need to, and I will after I get off of here, I need to make a playlist for the Todd Mullis trial because I did cover it. Me and Criminality actually covered it together along with Shamita and my friend Mo, Rottweiler Investigations. We all covered that. We all were on a panel together and we were talking about this trial. The part that gave me pause during the original trial was the testimony about the distance between where Todd was last seen by his son and where Amy Mullis was found. It's not like, this is a farm. It is a working farm. So it's not like we're talking about him being in the master bedroom and she was found in the backyard or something. It's not, they're not in close proximity. And Todd and Amy's son testified that, he saw his dad there the whole time he was with his father, and that at no time did he see his dad would have had to run from where they were to the red barn where Amy was. And it's kind of a distance. And yet his dad wasn't out of breath. He wasn't sweaty, none of that stuff. Right. And, hey, Crafty Chris, good to see ya. So, that gave me pause. Could he have done it? And the other thing that gave me pause was some of the testimony from the people at the hospital that attended to Amy and then her subsequent autopsy. There was testimony during the original trial that there was evidence of movement. And I never really could understand all of the medical examiner's testimony, which is really kind of weird for me because usually I'm actually good at that. I usually understand, and I found that in the original trial there was, for me, I didn't have like a good grasp on what the medical examiner was actually testifying to be quite honest. And I remember being very, very confused. And for that reason alone, if you aren't sure what happened, how can you be sure of who did it? So for that reason, that gave me pause as well. I'm really on the fence with this one. I'm not firmly on one side or the other. So what I thought we would do, hey, Shamita, remember this trial? We covered this together. For that, so what I thought we would do tonight is, and this might end up being quite a long live because I know that I have the medical examiner's testimony on my channel. So after we're done, I'll make a playlist for the Todd Mullis trial. So if you guys want to listen to it, you can, because I can't find it on Law and Crime. And so it's not in their playlist. So what I thought we'd do tonight is just go through and do some of the highlights. We'll do like the defense and the prosecution's opening statement. We'll listen to Todd's interview that took place at the police station, and then we'll listen to Todd's testimony. And then tomorrow we'll start with day one of his, or we'll also listen to closing arguments. And then we'll start listening to day one of this bench trial hearing that's going on right now. But I wanted you guys to have like an understanding of sort of what the basis is for these motions and this asking for a new trial. And let me just say, for the record, that it's once a person has been convicted of a crime, okay, it is, and they've gone through a trial, it is a jury trial. It is very, very difficult to get a retrial. I mean, the burden of proof the burden required by the appeals process rests solely with the defense, and it is not the same amount. It's not proof beyond a reasonable doubt. The standard is higher. What they have to prove is if the jury that sat through the entire trial, or the original trial, if they were to hear this new evidence, would this evidence be compelling enough to change their mind? And that's a difficult thing to prove. It's very difficult to get into another person's head and say, well, if they heard this, would they have changed their minds? It's almost an impossible burden. The only other but there are times when it's the same amount of burden, but there was such an egregious error during the trial or during jury deliberations that the only remedy is a retrial. But those are very rare. That doesn't happen that often. Yes, she did. We should, Shmita. That's a good idea. We should. Will you get up on panel? You better. Hey, Music City Mom, good to see you. Hey, Mally, good to see you. Hey, call me Sadie, good to see you. All right, so I don't want to take any more of your time talking. I want to get right into it, and let's hear it. So the first thing we're going to start with is the prosecutor's opening statement. And, I need to wonder if I can. No, I can't from here. I need to fix that so I can see the rest of it. Anyway, that notification, I turned off all of the, hey, Queen of Hearts, good to see you. I turned off the noises because people were like, it's not necessary, Bindi. We don't need the noises, which it was a little distracting for me too. All right, so here we go. After the live is over, I will link both playlists in my description. I'll make a playlist on my channel of the trial, and then I will link Law and Crime's playlist if you want to watch it there. All right. So let's unmute this. And here we go.
Everyone. Okay, would the state please read the charge in this matter?
Good morning. In the Iowa District Court in and for Delaware County, State of Iowa plaintiff versus Todd Michael Mullis. Number FECR 012941. Trial information. Comes now Delaware County Attorney John Bernal and Assistant Attorney General Denise A. Timmons as prosecuting attorneys, and in the name and by the authority of the state of Iowa, accuse Todd Mullis of murder first degree, committed as follows. Todd Mullis, on or about the 10th day of November 2018, in Delaware County, state of Iowa, did kill Amy Mullis in violation of Iowa Code sections 707.1 and 707.2 1A. A true information, signed John Bernal, Delaware County Attorney, signed Denise A. Timmons, Assistant Attorney General. To this charge, the defendant has entered a plea of not guilty. Thank you.
Okay, and whenever the state is ready for opening statement, go right ahead.
And beautiful woman. She was 39 years old. She was a daughter, a sister, an aunt, a friend, and a mother to her 3 young children. She was at her home on November 10th, 2018, and went outside to help do some work on her farm. But little did she know, her death would come that morning. In Amy's last moments on this earth, she would feel the corn rake that she was stabbed with in her back. She would feel that rake pierce her body, would fill with blood and air. And she would take those last breaths while she lay on a floor in a shed on her farm. Amy had so much life left to live. But that life was viciously taken from her on November 10th, 2018. Taken at the hands of this defendant. We would love for you to get to meet Amy, but you won't. Instead, you will share a courtroom with her killer. This brutal, senseless murder happened not far from here, in a town called Earlville. And to understand what happened, we have to go back to November 2018 and the time before that. Amy was not happy. She was having an affair and she was planning on leaving the defendant. The defendant knew something was going on. Amy had previously had an affair and they had reconciled. But in July 2018, the defendant knew she was having another affair. He confronted Amy and she denied it, but that just wasn't good enough for him. There was still a lot of tension and distrust, and the defendant had to do something. Over time, this kept weighing on the defendant. He wasn't going to let Amy get away with cheating on him again, and more importantly, he wasn't going to let Amy take half of his farm. You see, the defendant grew up on a farm. His father's a farmer, his brothers are farmers. He became a farmer himself. Being a farmer means everything to him. He has put his life into that farm. The defendant had to find a way to keep his farm. He couldn't let Amy leave him and take his money or land or half of his farm. That morning, when Amy walked out of her house on November 10th, 2018, to do chores on the farm, we'll all know by the end of this trial, that walk that she had taken hundreds of times out of her front door to the hog barn would be her last and would lead to her death. What made this day different than any other day was the defendant and his cold and calculated plan. November 10th, 2018 was finally the day that Amy's husband of over 14 years was going to carry out his plan. A plan he carefully waited to carry out until he felt like he had the perfect opportunity.
Paying your bills on time raises your credit score, right?
Let's go back and watch that again. I don't know if it was glitchy like that because I was on my other account that doesn't have premium, but let's try this again. All right, let's go to about right here.
She would feel the corn rake that she was stabbed with in her back.
Sorry about that, you guys.
She would feel that rake pierce her body. It would fill with blood and air.
Okay, so it isn't because of that. The glitch is because this has clearly been edited. Why they edited it this way, I don't know. It wasn't always this way. It used to be the full, all of it, everything that she said was available. I'm not exactly sure why this happened. It maybe that they edited it after the, but it doesn't. Hold on, let me look at something really quick. I wonder why it's like that. I mean, I mean, it's upload. I don't know I don't know what they did. I don't even understand why it's. We'll just have to go with it. All right, here we go. Sorry, you guys. That was just my own. Like, I wanted to see when this had been uploaded. All right, here we go.
And she would take those last breaths while she lay on a floor in a shed on her farm. Amy had so much life left to live, but that life was viciously taken from her on November 10th, 2018. Taken at the hands of this defendant. We would love for you to get to meet Amy, but you won't. Instead, you will share a courtroom with her killer. This brutal, senseless murder happened not far from here, in a town called Earlville. And to understand what happened, we have to go back to November 2018 and the time before that. Amy was not happy. She was having an affair and she was planning on leaving the defendant. The defendant knew something was going on. Amy had previously had an affair and they had reconciled. But in July 2018, the defendant knew she was having another affair. He confronted Amy and she denied it, but that just wasn't good enough for him. There was still a lot of tension and distrust, and the defendant had to do something. Over time, this kept weighing on the defendant. He wasn't going to let Amy get away with cheating on him again, and more importantly, he wasn't going to let Amy take half of his farm. You see, the defendant grew up on a farm. His father's a farmer, his brothers are farmers. He became a farmer himself. Being a farmer means everything to him. He has put his life into that farm. The defendant had to find a way to keep his farm. He couldn't let Amy leave him and take his money or land or half of his farm. That morning, when Amy walked out of her house on November 10th, 2018, to do chores on the farm, we'll all know by the end of this trial, that walk that she had taken hundreds of times out of her front door to the hog barn would be her last and would lead to her death. What made this day different than any other day was the defendant and his cold and calculated plan. November 10th, 2018 was finally the day that Amy's husband of over 14 years was going to carry out his plan. A plan he carefully waited to carry out until he felt like he had the perfect opportunity. The defendant made sure the only people at his farm that day were him, his wife, and his kids, because he didn't want any other witnesses. He had gotten Amy outside to help do chores on the farm, and then he had to separate her so he could execute his plan. He sent Amy to a red shed to get something, and that's where he then attacked her and killed her. He used a corn rake because he tried to make it look like a farm accident. He was hoping that people would just feel sorry for him and not ask any questions. He then went back to the hog barn, distancing himself from the crime he just committed, acting like nothing happened. And what did he do then? He sent his 13-year-old son to go and find his mother, who he had just slaughtered. The defendant acted like he was upset. He had to. This was his big moment, what he had been practicing and planning for months.
Okay, I have to pause for commentary. This was a part of the opening statements that I couldn't get behind, and I'm going to tell you why. I cannot fathom or envision, I suppose, Todd pretending to be upset. He seems to me to be the type of person who's rather stoic. And so to act and over dramatize emotions, just there's something about that that doesn't have the ring of truth to me. It doesn't sound right. I don't know. I always struggled with that during all of this when I was covering the trial. Also, I had something else I want. Oh, yes, his appearance. So Todd looks very different in this trial, and he looks even more different at these in these hearings. Like he's clearly he's lost quite a bit of weight between when he was arrested in 2018 and then the trial in 2019. And all I can tell you guys is Todd Mullis has not skipped arm day in the rec yard or in the gym at prison. Like he's been working out apparently. I wasn't a fan of this opening statement. It seemed extra to me. Like I like a passionate and impassioned prosecuting attorney, one that cares. But there was something about this one that just seemed, quite frankly, extra in a way that I don't enjoy.
He immediately started telling his story. He told 911 she fell on a corn rake. The defendant believed he thought of everything, but what he didn't count on was what happened next. Nobody believed his story. The doctors and law enforcement knew something just wasn't right. The doctors could tell that Amy was struck at least 2 times in the back with the corn rake. This was not an accident. It was a homicide. The defendant's plan wasn't so perfectly thought out. Now, you're going to hear a lot about Todd and Amy's relationship before this happened. And you're going to hear about how Amy was fearful of the defendant, how she told her friends and family members that she was planning on leaving him, but that she was afraid that if he found out she was having an affair, he would kill her. And she also told another friend that he would make her disappear. But wait, that's not all. Because what you're also going to hear is that the way that we know that the defendant planned this was after the police executed a search warrant on his house. They collected the defendant's iPad that is connected to his personal Gmail account. And they were able to see searches in the months before Amy's death. Proof that he was planning to kill Amy. Looking up things like how to kill unfaithful women. The evidence in this case is overwhelming. And the trail of evidence leads to only one place, to where Amy's murderer sits across this courtroom from you today. And make no mistake, the defendant earned this seat in this courtroom by what he did that day, November 10th, 2018. After you hear all the evidence in this case, the judge is going to instruct you on the law as it applies to the evidence. And then you will know that there is only one verdict. Only one verdict supported by both the law and the evidence, and only one just verdict, a verdict of guilty.
Okay, so now let's hear. What are you doing, Jen? Get it together, lady. Let's hear the defenses. I don't remember how I felt back in 2020 when I did this case. But hey, Brandy. Hey, Violet. Hey, Rachel. Everybody coming in. It's good to see you. This comment is important. I want to talk about this really quickly. So Call Me Sadie says, if Todd did unalive Amy, him sending Tristan to look for his mom ranks up there with Letitia making Harley go across the country with Gannon in a suitcase and sending her out to buy like the cleaning products. Yeah, I agree with you. There's just something about all of this that doesn't quite, I don't know. It doesn't sit all the way right with me. You know, I'm very, very, very interested in the trial that's happening, or the hearing that's taking place now, and the evidence that the defense is presenting, because, but I'm glad I'm doing this because it's been a while since I've listened to this. And so even when I was listening to the hearing, like, I'm familiar with the case, right? But you guys know how it is. Like, I always have at least 50, 1100 tabs open in my brain at any given time. And I don't always keep all the data. Like, sometimes the data gets overwritten, you know, mainly with new movie quotes or show quotes, music, lyrics, you know, that kind of thing, you know, the important things. So, yeah. Like, for instance, all I can think of right now, other than what I'm watching right now, but in the back of my brain, I've been thinking about doing a live or maybe a video about Bram Stoker's Dracula and Nosferatu, because did y'all know back in the day there was a copyright claim made by Bram Stoker's widow, and she claimed copyright infringement. And so all I can think about is I watched Nosferatu yesterday, and I was aware of the lawsuit. And so I started to pay extra attention to the little details. And I kind of want to talk about that, but it has nothing to do with this. But that's the kind of stuff that's stored up in my brain, that sometimes the details of cases that I've already watched gets overwritten. So that's my bad. But now let's listen to the defense, their opening statement, and see what they have to say. All right, here we go.
Please, the court. Counsel.
Good morning, folks. I agree with some of what the state has just mentioned to you in opening. On November 10th, 2018, in Delaware County, Iowa, Amy Mullis was viciously and deliberately murdered. The issue, really not who did it, but whether Mr. Mullis did. The evidence is much along the lines of what you've just heard. On November 10th, on that Saturday morning, Todd and his son Tristan, who's 13 years old, went to another farm that they farm and manage, do some chores. There had been some chisel plowing, that's my term for it, had been done on that property the day before. It had gotten cold, the ground was too frozen, so that plan had to be abandoned. Todd and Tristan returned back to the home place where the two younger children and Amy were up and about. They had a small breakfast, and Todd and Tristan announced or stated that they were going to go out to the hog barns and get ready for a delivery of small pigs. The Mullises had these large hog confinement barns, and maybe I'll use the wrong terminology here, but these are giant barns, much like a football field. And they bring in small pigs when they're being weaned off the sow, and then they're raised to butcher things to be done in the barns. So their plan was to go out and start that process. A few days before, I believe on November 6th, you'll learn that Amy had had a medical procedure. She was having some bleeding problems, and the doctors had recommended that she have a minor surgery, which it was done. I believe that you will hear that the testimony was that she felt cooped up, had been in the house for several days, and wanted to join Todd and Tristan. It was her idea to go out and help work in the barns. And she did. And you'll hear that when they got out in the barn, each of them, Todd, Tristan, and Amy, set about to do different things. Todd was going to take these pipes, and I think you'll hear them referred to as nipple feeders. They're actually water pipes with small nipples on them, so that these small pigs used to nursing off their mother will now nurse water from these pipes once they've been put in these pens. Todd was doing that. Tristan was getting these heaters that had been stored in a storage area he would bring these to each of the pens and set them out ready to be installed. Amy was there was light fixtures above these pens in walkways, and they were, as you might imagine, with all these hogs, the manure and the smell, that there was lots of flies. Not in November, but there had been when there had been pigs in the barn, the large hogs. So Amy set about to clean those fixtures off, to take the fly feces off of the globes around those lights. And to do so, she couldn't just stand and reach up and do it. She would use a pail sometimes, or stand up on the fence partitions if there was a place to put her foot. And that's what they did. Each kind of doing their own thing, all within proximity to one another. At some point, Todd noticed, Tristan noticed, that Amy seemed to maybe lose her balance, comment upon her dizziness. And this is something that Todd had witnessed even before she had had the medical procedure on November 6th. His comment was, "Honey, take..."
Okay, I have to stop here for a little commentary. See, this is where the defense lost me, because when he started his opening statement, he is talking about the fact that Amy was murdered, right? But now he's starting to go into how it could have been an accident. And so it's sort of confusing. And honestly, I think the jury was confused. I felt like, I feel like when you are an attorney, a criminal defense attorney, I think that it's important that you match energy with the prosecuting attorney. So if they get up there, even if it's not your style, if they get up there and they give this really impassioned opening statement, if I feel like you lose the jury when you don't, because it's such a stark contrast that the jury's like, wait, what? And the thing is that, and I think attorneys sometimes, I don't know, maybe they forget about this or they don't think about it, but jurors are just regular everyday people. These are not typically people that like watch a lot of true crime. They don't usually get picked for jurors. So I don't know. It's just, I wish that he would have been like more impassioned about this whole situation. It just felt like he really just wasn't. I don't know. It just was weird. Okay, here we go.
Take it easy. Why don't you go back in the house? Don't push yourself. She wanted to help. So she continued on, and there was again observation of her unsteadiness. So finally she agreed that she would stop what she was doing. Still wanting to help. Todd says, if you want to do something, there was a mother cat had a litter of kittens, and they were being kept in the shop, which was in between the hog barns, a little off to the, as you look towards the house, a little off to the right. Somehow the mother cat had gotten run over by a skid steer or pickup or tractor or something. So the kittens were abandoned, not abandoned, they were just there by themselves. And each time that they'd open the door to get equipment in and out, there was a fear that they were going to run over some kittens, upset the smaller kids.
I believe the word that you're looking for, counselor, is orphaned. They were orphaned because if their mother is no longer alive, then they're little orphan kittens. I think that's the word you're looking for, but let's keep going. I'm going to speed him up just a little bit because, wow. All right, here we go.
So Todd says, there's a pet carrier over in that old red shed. You can go over and get it. Just put it up by the shop on your way into the house. Okay. She leaves the hog barn. Todd and Tristan continue to work. They're doing these two chores of theirs. At some point, I believe you'll hear that Tristan said the only time that he ever was out of his father's sight was to go into an office area. It's more of just a separated area off the main part of the hog barn where there's some equipment. And he got a drink of water. Kind of just turned the faucet on. There's a hose hooked to it. And he thought he did that maybe twice and was out of the main hog area for a very short period of time. Todd was still in there. He was in there when he went out to get a drink. He was in there when he went back. They worked for some period of time, and I don't think there's a real good handle on what that period of time is. Maybe an hour, hour and a half. And where you can see up by the shop where this pet carrier would have been placed by Amy per this plan, and it wasn't there. And Todd says to Tristan, why don't you go see what's going on and get that pet carrier if it's not up there. Tristan goes to the shed where an awful, awful thing had occurred. Tristan yells for his father. He comes, he finds her in the shed, horribly, with this corn fork stuck in her back. And you'll see pictures of this shed where you get in these sliding doors, which were kind of frozen open, but a pretty short width. And then you go in and there's a bunch of these plastic farm sprayer tanks, and you kind of turn to the left and then you go down this hallway. And in fact, down that hallway, there's some auger screws laying on the floor, but there you see this pet carrier that's partially pulled out from a shelf. But Amy's out laying on her face, or on her hands and knees, crunched over near the door. It's so horrible. Todd cannot get her out of the shed without taking that fork out of her back because the doors weren't wide enough. There wasn't enough room to move her. So he did it. And he had Tristan help him get her in the pickup, literally laid across their laps, called 911 and proceeded to drive as fast as he could towards medical care. The 911 operator directs them to a certain location where he or she, I can't remember, is sending law enforcement to meet them and ultimately emergency equipment. And they meet on a roadway out in the country where Amy is then transferred from the pickup into an ambulance and taken.
So this is a really good point that Paul makes. Paul says they missed this point in 2019 and trial this week. Amy had complained that she felt cooped up and wanted to do something to help and get out of the house. That's why Todd and Tristan gave her the pet carrier task. Yes. Oh, Julia, good to see you, babe. Yeah, I have thoughts on that. Maybe if Allie goes over it again, I'll maybe she'll invite me up on the panel or something. I'm not going to cover it over here because she's doing such a good job. But this is an important point to make. Todd, okay, first degree murder is premeditation, okay, which legally there's no like defined amount of time for it to be considered premeditated. It can be seconds, really, or it can be, months or years. But they're just, I just can't imagine. How could Todd have known that on this day, or was it just like, as the state is suggesting, that everything just lined up and he could finally, carry out this plan? That he was so angry with Amy and he did not want her to get, half of his, his farm. That's another thing that I don't really recall a lot from the trial being presented. Yes, they presented a lot of evidence of Amy having an affair. Okay, they made their point there. But one thing they didn't make that I don't recall, and it doesn't mean it didn't happen, it just means I don't remember it, which, hello, it's me, that I didn't hear a lot of testimony about is conversations about Amy leaving Todd and what she wanted from, what she expected or what she was going to try to get out of, as a settlement. I don't remember if there was a lot of that testimony. And I feel like, I feel like that's something that would stick out to me. It would stand out to me, but I'm not like 100. I just can't remember. And this is another excellent point that Paul makes. Paul says he wasn't even supposed to be on the farm that day, nor did he know the whereabouts of the other children while cleaning the hog barn. That is an important thing to take into consideration. That is important. All right, so let's continue to listen. We don't have very much longer for him, and then we'll get into some more testimony.
Taken to the hospital, where she is soon pronounced dead. Tristan was taken by a friend, Michael Krogman, from the scene back to the farm. 2 deputies had asked for him to do that, for Tristan to go back there so that he could show them where he found his mom, a little bit about what happened. And Tristan did that. Then Tristan went to the hospital where he meets with family. He's questioned briefly there by law enforcement. He basically tells you the story that I just told you. Maybe not in quite so much detail. Todd did state that he thought he had no other explanation. She went in the barn, she ends up with a fork in her back. She must have fell. He had no idea. But you will learn, that she didn't fall in the fork. That there was 4 times on this fork, and you'll see it here in the courtroom, that there was more than 4 wounds to Amy's body, that she was struck more than once. But when she was there working in the barn, and you'll see pictures of her clothing, she had on several layers of clothes, from a light shirt to another shirt. I think it was 3 layers, and one was a fairly heavy coat. So Todd couldn't see the wounds. there was some blood, and that was about it, quite a bit of blood. So his explanation was the only one he could think of. This wasn't something he manufactured. It was like, what else could it be? She was dizzy in the hog barn. Here we find her with this fork in her back. She was trying to get this pet carrier out of the shed. I don't have any other explanation. And that story remains consistent when he's questioned more completely by law enforcement. Tristan at the farm, at the hospital, later questioned at a school, and later questioned at a professional, it's a CPC center, I think they call it, at St. Luke's Hospital in Cedar Rapids, where professionals who interview children who have been victims or witnesses, he was interviewed there, and again, his story remains basically the same. Yes, I expect you're going to hear a history of this marriage. That approximately 5 years before this all happened, Amy was working at the hospital, I believe in Manchester, and that she had an affair with an individual. Todd ultimately learned about that affair. They, at the suggestions of friends and family, they went through counseling, and they worked through it. I believe you'll hear testimony from Todd that his marriage was important. His children were important. The farm life was important to him, but not so important that he's going to murder the mother of his children and his wife. There will be sometimes perhaps confusing text messages, phone contacts, or information about what was said by Amy. But I think you will find that Todd continued to work towards maintaining his marriage throughout all this confusion. But behind his back, Amy was having a significant sexual affair with someone who actually came to the farm on a regular basis, a gentleman by the name of Jerry Frazier. He worked for a company that contracted these hogs into these various hog confinement facilities. And I think he'll testify that he was responsible for calling upon and servicing numerous hog operations like the Mullises. So he knew the farm, he knew the people, he'd come there on a regular basis, and he and Amy would have business conversations, business communication, I guess I'll call it, about feed and medicine for the hogs and things that were going on a business level. But he would say that in the spring of 2018, it became a flirting thing, and then it became a sexual thing. And it was extensive, that he and Amy would meet on various locations at various times, and it was sexual. I'm going to say you'll find that somewhere around the first part, at least the first half of July, Todd saw some phone bills that would show the amount of messaging going back between Amy and Mr. Frazier. And it bothered him. Bothered him to the extent that he called Jerry Frazier and said, "Hey, what's going on? Is there something going on?" Frazier, "I don't know what you're talking about. I'm just a nice guy. Amy wants the kids to get involved in showing pigs at fairs and stuff like that, and I help out a lot of people, and we got our regular contacts about the hog operation there at the Mullis farm. Don't worry, Todd." Todd even calls his wife, and she thinks Todd's crazy. She doesn't suspect anything, and I think it's pretty fair to assume that Jerry Frazier convinced his wife that Todd was a little wacky and don't pay attention to him. The affair continued. There was plans to meet at the state fair in Des Moines in August. Amy was telling people, as soon as Jerry is ready and his kids have graduated, then I'm going to get a divorce and so forth and so on. But I don't think Jerry was quite into it like she was. But he admits it still continued right up until just a few days before this November 6th medical procedure. So I'm not going to try to lay out exactly all these text messages and communications, but there will be some. The internet searches that the state mentioned, there were phones, there were Kindles, there was an iPad, or excuse me, a laptop, and there was an iPad. An iPad used extensively for the hog and farming operation. It would actually be taken out in the tractors when you were doing, like, as I understand it, and I hope I'm not wrong, like GPS planning, that you could coordinate with this iPad. And also it was used in the hog operation because it had better Wi-Fi or whatever the connections. I'm terrible with this stuff. I'm too old. but it had better connections, so it'd be taken out in the shop. And that a dispute may be as to how many people had access to that and what the significance of these searches are, when they were made and why they were made. Folks, again, Todd Mullis' statements about Amy falling on a fork and dying accidentally was a honest, legitimate, on-the-spot explanation or an attempt to explain what happened to her. It was wrong. She was murdered. Horribly. But I believe that you will find that not only at the end of this case that there's a reasonable doubt about Mr. Mullis' guilt, but there's no doubt at all. Thank you.
See, I think that's kind of where the defense lost me, is in saying, yes, it was a murder. And yes, our client said that it was an accident, but it was basically like a hypothesis. He had no idea what happened. And I just, it wasn't good. It wasn't good. Okay. So I was thinking, what should we listen to next? And my first inclination would be that you listen to the only witness that day other than Todd and Amy, and that's Tristan. But as I sit here and I think about it, I think it's a lot, and I'm not gonna. I'm gonna give you guys. I'm gonna put the link to the playlist on here for you guys, and you can listen to it on your own. I don't know. I feel differently about playing it now that, like we had to play it then when we were covering the trial, but to play it now just seems like too much. Okay, so hang on a minute. Who are you suggesting? Terry Stainer? Or is that how you say it? I don't see it on this playlist. No. All right, hold on. Let me see if I can find it. While I do that, since we're already talking about it in the chat, okay, much was made about this 911 call and something. I'm not going to say what it is because I am really wanting for you guys to listen to it for yourselves and make your own determination. I think that's best. And so that's what we'll do. And then I'll go look for a different playlist. All right, here we go. All right, let me see. Hold on a second.
Ms. Hughes, go ahead.
Thank you, Judge. Now, Todd, I just want to talk a little bit more about a few more things. So when you call 911 on November 10th, 2018, and you pull over, because 911 tells you to, right?
Yes.
And you pull over, and they tell you to get Amy out of the car.
No.
Or, I'm sorry, to lay her flat.
Yeah,
Because they want you to be able to do CPR. You remember that? Because
Yeah.
eventually you
Yep.
do some CPR on her. Is that
Yes.
right? And just so that we all understand, where is it that you perform the CPR on Amy?
I started in the truck.
In the truck. And are you in the truck until Luke Thompson arrives?
I'm standing
Or I'm sorry, you're like leaning inside the truck, would that be fair to say?
Yes.
And is she seated in the passenger seat with the seat down?
Yes.
Or, okay, so when they tell you to do chest compressions, half of your body's in the car and that's what you're doing. You're using your mouth and your hands to do that.
I did not use my mouth.
Oh, I'm sorry, so you're just pressing. Where's Tristan at that point?
I told him to go stand by the road to flag him down if they were coming.
So as you're doing those chest compressions, is anyone else there initially?
No.
And you're holding onto that phone and you're doing the chest compressions.
I had my shoulder holding my phone against my ear.
So at that point, the only people in the car are you and Amy, right?
Yes.
And at this point, you don't at all think that Amy's cheating on you.
No.
You confronted her, you put it to bed.
Yes.
You, even after the rumors a month later, you still didn't think she was cheating on you because she told you she wasn't. Right?
Yes.
And even in those months, I know you told some people she was really moody. She was having some issues, right?
She had a lot going on all summer.
So because she had all the stuff going on in Ankeny, right?
Yes.
She was going up there. She was visiting a lot.
She had her grandma die. Her uncle had problems.
You said in those 2 months, in September and October, she was gone about 30 days.
There was a stretch in there. Yeah.
And she would come and go, but she was gone quite a bit, right?
Yes.
And things are getting a little bit tense at home.
No.
So you're not upset at all about this?
I was needing help at home, and
Right. And
I guess you could call it some tension, I guess.
well, and you're calling Eileen Fuller, Amy's stepmother, around this time, right?
Yes.
And you're telling her, this is hard, right? I'm harvesting,
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
taking care of the kids. Now, Todd, here I'm gonna play you the part where you're doing the chest compressions, and I'm just gonna ask that you listen in between the chest compressions, okay? Now, Todd, did you just hear that whisper at the end of that?
Yes.
And what did you whisper?
I couldn't hear it.
Okay, I'm gonna play it again. Todd, do you whisper cheating whore right there?
No.
So you don't remember?
Okay. That's what this is. This is all the things, right? This is big, huge kerfuffle. Yes, I will. I have not read through the PCR to answer you, Paul, and we can do the side dude. I got that ready for you guys. Okay. I don't hear it. I don't hear what she said. He said, and it doesn't, yeah, it sounds like counting. It doesn't actually sound to me like cheating whore. It does. That's just not what it sounds like to me. We can try. I think they're going to play it again. So let's hear it. Okay, hold on.
Remember what you whispered?
No.
Okay, I'm gonna play another clip for you. Do you know what you whispered there?
No.
Did you hear that? So I'm going to play that part one more time. The first clip is 6:53 of that second tape, and this second one is right at 0700. Just try to listen really closely. I just want to know if you remember what you said. Right there, do you say, go to hell, cheating whore?
No.
So you don't hear that?
No.
You didn't hear at 6:53 cheating whore. You didn't hear that.
I didn't hear that word.
And right at that, after you hear a ping, you don't hear go to hell, cheating whore.
No.
Okay. And I have to say, this is the part that I was like, I remember really distinctly with it was me and Shmita and Criminality and Mo on the panel, and I didn't hear it. Okay. And it never actually made sense to me because he knows he's on the phone with 911. This is not a Donna Adelson situation where Donna thinks that she's ended the call, but the call wasn't actually ended and it's still recording. Like, to me, it doesn't sound like that's what he's saying. Now, this is the part that kind of, this is where I have pause. And this is pause that, this is why I'm still on the fence. As Jenny has pointed out, Jenny says, I can't get past the testimony that she would have had to have fallen on the corn rake more than once. Now, I distinctly remember trying to take the photograph of her injuries and the photograph of the corn rake and try to figure it out. And I remember me and Shmita and Mo and Criminality being on the panel trying to do this multiple times. And it felt like we couldn't make it work. And it felt like, the way I remember it, it just seems like they're accounting for the way that the injury, I don't necessarily think that she fell, but how can they the farm is huge. How can they rule out somebody being there? Whether or not somebody else was on that property. And I do remember from the original trial that the side guy had an alibi, and so did his wife, if I remember correctly, because obviously those would be the next two. It would, after Todd, right? He would be the suspect number one, but suspect number two would have been Jerry Frazier's wife, right? And then maybe Jerry Frazier, right? There's a lot of this that just doesn't actually make sense. And I really do feel like I need to hear Todd say emphatically that she died by falling on the corn rake. To me, it sounds like, if I'm remembering right, the way that he described it is maybe she fell. I can only tell you how I found her, and that I couldn't get her out of that barn without taking the corn rake out. So is it possible, and this is one thing that we wondered, that because if I remember correctly, and this is the part that I know that I know that there's a medical examiner that talks, or a forensic pathologist, I should say, that testifies in this hearing. And I listened to part of it, but then I was like, no, I better wait. So I can completely focus. But I feel like, is it possible? Because I remember we talked about this when I covered this originally. Is it possible? Because not all of the puncture wounds were at the same depth. And so I wondered if, when he was taking it out, if she moved, and as he was pulling it out, maybe one or two of the times hit her again, like accidentally. I don't know. Okay, so Julie says, Casey Anthony TikTok video. Casey says in the beginning of the video, she's waving her face because she's hot. She says, I'm going to sweat to death. That's how Kaylee died. Isn't that how Kaylee died? I believe that they think that Kaylee died of asphyxiation, smothering. And that, yeah, but I mean, you know, I don't know if she was hot, but that's, if I remember it correctly, that's how it went. But still, to say that for Casey to be saying anything about death at all, period, is just, it just hits your ears wrong. It's just not, you know, and she just does not give a rat's fat kneecap. She says whatever, and she can say whatever because she was acquitted, and it's annoying. Hey, Kimberly. Hey, Carolina. Good to see you. So yeah, okay. So there's the 911 call. Now we're going to switch it over to my friend Mo's channel, Rottweiler Investigations. And we're going to listen to Jerry Frazier on the stand. Are you ready? All right. Here we go. Here's the other man.
RYFRASHER.
Go ahead, counsel.
Sir, can you tell us how old you are, please?
49.
And what area do you currently live in?
Around Anamosa.
And what area did you grow up in?
That same area.
Are you currently employed?
Yes.
And what is it that you do?
I oversee hog confinement barns.
How long have you been doing that for?
About 8 years.
And can you just briefly describe what that means when you oversee hog confinement barns?
Basically just deal with the producer that owns the building as far as care and daily care and marketing, and do all the legwork behind it. They have to do the day-to-day stuff. I take care of everything else.
And did you have a set place you would work, or do you work in different places?
It's all over.
And would it be fair to say that you go to different farms around the area that you work in?
Yes.
And do you know how many farms you work at?
At one time it was 42 or 3.
Did you do any work on the Mullis farm?
Yes.
And specifically, back in 2018, did you work on the Mullis farm?
Yes.
And in what capacity did you do work at the Mullis farm?
Just overseeing their hog operation.
I have to agree with you here, Paul, where Paul says, important to notice his demeanor, also a farmer, very unemotional / stoic, as Todd was. Yes, I have to agree there. I think that it is important to understand their demeanor. I mean, this is why I could never be a farmer, okay? If I had pigs, and especially piglets, right, that were just weaned off of their mom, and there's no way that I could eat my friend. To me, they would become friends at that point. This is why I'm not judging them. This is why I am not a farmer, because I could not do it. I'm not judging them because they can. I'm just telling you that I can't. I just cannot. My friends don't become food. And for me, because I love animals so much, all animals, they would all be my friends. I would make an absolutely horrible farmer. But farmers see things and come into contact with life and death on a pretty regular basis when you're on a farm, okay? You cannot become you have to care about your animals, obviously, but they're not your friends. And that takes a level of compartmentalization. And so I think that is important to note when watching somebody like this testify. Why aren't they emotional? Because people are all like, you know, well, I would do such and such. Look, I'm going to say it like this. I used to be like that too. I used to think, well, I will do, or if it were me, I would. I'm going to tell you the truth. I've changed my mind completely. I don't know what the F I would do. And I hope I never have to know what the F I would do. Okay. Because I've never been in that situation. So I just, I think that is really, really important to note, that when you're watching testimony like this, it's about, and I think we frequently do this as humans, and because it's the human experience to try to relate And we see things in other people that are reminiscent of something maybe that we've been through. But we try to identify on that level. But I don't think when you're watching, like, to determine guilt or innocence, I think that you have to take that, you have to compartmentalize, and you can't think of it in terms of their, how they might, it's hard as a human being. We all like bring ourselves to these cases, and we're paying attention to them, and we're watching, and we're following, and our experiences shape our perspectives. But I do think that it's really important sometimes to remind ourselves, I have to do it too. Hey, this is a farmer. They're going to react differently to seeing things than what I might. Okay. So I just wanted to, that was a huge, long Miss America answer to say that, yes, Paul, I agree with you. All right, let's keep listening.
I was there, depending on size and health, anywhere from bi-weekly to maybe once a month, just depending on, like I said, sizes and health.
And how long had you been doing business with the Mullis farm?
About 7 years, probably.
And who did you communicate with regarding the business side of the hog barns?
Usually Todd, sometimes Amy, but usually Todd.
And how would you communicate with Todd when you would communicate with him?
If I wasn't there, it was phone or text message.
And how would you communicate with Amy?
Text message or phone.
Now, at some point, did your relationship with Amy change from a business relationship to some other type of relationship?
Yes.
And when was that?
Roughly the first part of June, into May, 1st of June.
And would that be in the year 2018?
Yes.
And what kind of relationship did you and Amy start then?
Had a physical relationship.
And how would you and Amy communicate at that time?
Text message.
How often would you and Amy meet for this physical relationship?
It just depended. I mean, everything was very short. It was maybe once a week, maybe.
Could you speak into the microphone?
Maybe more, depending on just how it worked out.
And you.
Now, also something to keep in mind here is the difficulty, the awkwardness that must be felt by both Jerry and Todd. Okay. At the end of the day, look, it is what it is. All right. And I'm not judging Amy for having an affair. Okay. People do stuff. People make mistakes. We're human beings. It's not a reason to murder somebody because they cheated on you. It's just not. And so I'm not judging Amy for having an affair. I'm not. But at the end of the day, Jerry and Todd have both lost Amy, right? Obviously, the type of relationship that existed between them was different, right? Jerry and Amy, it was an affair. Who knows where it would have gone, if it would have gone anywhere. And obviously, Todd and Amy were married for a number of years, and they shared children together. Can you imagine how difficult it must be for both of these men to be sitting in the same room, so close to each other, knowing that this is your wife's Sancho? That's what he is. I'm not saying he's a bad dude. Look, he didn't do it to me. He didn't cheat on me. The only people that have a right to be mad, in my opinion anyway, or judgy about it, is his wife and Todd, frankly, because Amy made a commitment to him, and his wife, he made a commitment to his wife. So I'm not judging them at all, but I just feel like, can you imagine how awkward it is? And yet Todd is able to sit there and not have like a visceral reaction. I don't know very many men that would, or people that would be able to do that, that would not, that are able to compartmentalize in such a way where nothing comes across their face. The only other person I've ever seen be able to do that is Chad Daybell and George Washington Wagner IV. That's it. That's all. All right, here we go.
You indicated that you would communicate by way of text message.
Yes.
Primarily. And this was a sexual relationship, correct?
Yes.
And would you and Amy at times talk also about your relationship when you were together?
Now say that again.
Would you and Amy talk about your relationship?
If you mean by text message?
By text message or in person?
Not really.
Did you talk about your future with Amy?
A little bit, yes.
And initially, when you first started seeing Amy, what kind of things would you talk about in the future?
Talked about there was a chance we could end up together.
At the time that this was happening, that you had started this relationship with Amy, were you married?
Yes.
And Amy was married as well?
Yes.
What, if anything, happened in July 2018?
Todd confronted me about a bunch of text messages. And then I denied it and said it was over some other stuff, dealing with kids and sports and showing livestock. And a couple days later, he called my wife and talked to her about it. And then approximately 2 days later, he called both of us back and apologized to both of us and said he should have handled it different.
Now, let me just stop you. When you say that Todd confronted you, do you know the exact date that he did?
No, I don't.
Would it be fair to say that it was the end of July 2018?
It was sometime in July.
And how was it that Todd confronted you?
Called me.
And what do you remember him saying to you?
Just that she had texted me a lot of times in a day and wanted to know why or if it was possible.
And when you say she, do you mean Amy?
Amy, yes.
And what was your response to Todd?
I just said that she was texting me and it was over kids playing sports, showing livestock, things like that.
Now, you indicated that around that same time, Todd called your wife.
Yeah, a couple days later after he confronted or called me about it, he called my wife.
And he called her the first time?
Yes.
And do you know what that conversation consisted
Just
of?
basically told her that we were communicating by text message a lot.
And then you indicated that a few days later there was a second
Yes.
call to your wife?
Mm-hmm.
All right. So now this actually kind of is in line with what Todd is saying, that he suspected there was cheating, but he didn't have concrete proof of the cheating. And so that when he was testifying, when they were talking about that 911 call, I mean, it is possible that he might not have thought that his wife, maybe he was in a level of denial, because it seems like from this testimony and the way that I remember it from the trial in general is that Todd knew that there were messages, a lot of messages between Jerry and Amy, but he did not know the contents of those messages. He just knew that there was a large number of them. So, I mean, that kind of does what's the word? Substantiate what Todd Mullis is saying or has said.
Is that a yes?
Yes.
And what was the nature of that conversation?
He just called to apologize.
Did he also apologize to you?
Yes.
Now, did you and Amy ever have a conversation about the fact that Todd confronted you?
Yes, I told her he did.
And what, if anything, did Amy tell you?
She was upset that he did it.
Did she also tell you that he confronted her?
I don't remember.
Now, after you were confronted by Todd, did you and Amy decide that you were going to communicate a different type of way?
Yeah, I told her that we needed to slow down, and we couldn't text anymore, so she wanted to do an email.
Did you then set up a Gmail account?
Yes.
And after July 2018, would you use that Gmail account to communicate with Amy?
Yes.
And Amy also had a Gmail account?
Yes.
And then you would both use those accounts, to speak with each other?
Yes.
Now, you indicated that you did tell Amy that you needed to slow things down.
Mm-hmm.
Is that a yes?
Yes, I'm sorry.
But you did still continue to see Amy?
Yes.
And you still continued to communicate with Amy up until her death?
Yes.
And you still would communicate with Amy using those Gmail accounts?
Yes.
What, if anything, did Amy tell you about her relationship with Todd when you would be with her?
She really didn't say much. We didn't talk about relationships much, other than I know she wasn't happy.
Did she tell you how Todd treated her?
She made different notes, or not notes, but said she felt like a slave or a hostage around there.
Now, did Amy ever tell you whether or not she was planning on leaving Todd?
She said she was wanting to,
Did you and Amy ever have any conversations about what Todd would do if he found out she was having an affair?
One time, she did say that if he ever found out, she would disappear.
Were you afraid about Todd finding out about your affair?
Yes?
Why?
Oh, why wouldn't you be? I mean, if you're having a relationship with somebody's wife, you would not want them to find out.
Generally, where would you and Amy meet?
Usually just on a gravel road somewhere.
And there were a couple times where you guys made plans to meet in different areas and in different locations.
Yes.
When was the last time you saw Amy?
I don't know the exact date. It was sometime before she had her surgery.
And where did you meet that time?
I don't remember.
And that time that you met, do you believe it was days before her surgery?
Yeah, it'd have been a few days before.
And did you guys have sexual relations that day?
I don't honestly remember.
You previously talked to police about about all of these things, correct?
Yes.
And
Let's just take a moment, shall we? I know, Paul, I know it's coming, and because now, like, it's all coming back to me. Let's just take a moment. Let's all brace ourselves before we hear it. Okay. There's something a little contradictory here that's going on. All right. On the one hand, you have Amy saying that if Todd ever found out that she was cheating, that he would make her disappear. Okay. Then you have Todd kind of finding out, right? He sees all of these text messages, just the number of text messages, not the contents of these texts between Jerry and Amy, right? And so what does he do? Well, he calls Jerry and confronts Jerry, which Jerry denies it. And then he calls Jerry's wife and lets her in on the situation. But at the end of it, like a couple of days later, he then calls back and apologizes. And to me, that's like two different ends of the emotional spectrum, right? You have rage where you find out and you're so angry and you're so betrayed that you unalive the person. And then the other end of the emotional spectrum, you have him actually apologizing to Jerry, who is cheating on his wife, who is cheating on with his wife, and he's cheating on his wife. And now Todd is that's gaslighting, by the way. But then you have, it's all just weird. Yeah. All right, so let's hear it. All right. I'm going to rewind it a couple of seconds. So here we go.
And did you guys have sexual relations that day?
I don't honestly remember.
You previously talked to police about about all of these things, correct?
Yes.
And in fact, you talked to the police shortly after Amy's death.
Yes.
And you indicated to them that you believe the last time you saw her that you did have some type of sexual relations.
It was not sex, it was oral.
So you do recall that there was some type of
There would
oral
have been
sex?
some of that, yes, not sex. I guess
And you and Amy would communicate by text messages approximately 15 to 40 messages a day, correct?
Yeah, correct.
And that was up until November 10th.
Yeah, I guess, I assume.
Now, Jerry, where were you on November 10th, 2018?
I was at home.
And what area do you live in?
I live around Anamosa.
And how far is Anamosa from the Mullis farm?
Probably 45 miles, 45 minutes.
What did you do that morning?
My son was home from college. We show pigs. I'd actually bought a tanning bed to tan some pigs in the winter because their pigment doesn't get sun in the winter. So we hung a tanning bed in the barn, and then we cleaned the barn and walked our pigs that morning.
And were you with your son all morning?
Yes.
And was anybody else at your home when you were there?
No.
Now, on November 10th, 2018, did you see Amy Mullis?
November, no,
On the day of her death?
no,
Did you at any point go to the Mullis farm?
no.
Jerry, on the day of Amy's death, did you communicate with her that morning?
Yes,
And how was it that you communicated with her?
email.
And did those emails start at approximately 7:40 in the morning?
I don't remember the time, but I'm sure they did.
Judge, may I approach?
Yes.
Mr. Frazier, I'll ask that you look at those two pieces of paper that I just handed you. Do you recognize those?
Yes,
And Judge, just for the record, I've marked those as State's Exhibit 110. They were not on the proposed list, Judge. We will upload this later. Jerry, do you know what that is that I just handed you?
yes.
And what is that?
It's the emails from that morning.
And are those emails between your Gmail account and Amy's Gmail account?
Yes,
And do you recall that those are the messages that you sent Amy and Amy sent you that morning?
yes,
And it appears to be a true and accurate copy of those exchanges.
yes.
Your Honor, at this time, I would ask that State's Exhibit 110 be admitted into evidence.
Any objection?
No objection, Your Honor.
Also, this is a good point. Clicker AK says if he was so worried about Todd finding out when confronted by Todd, why didn't he break it off then? Why didn't Jerry tell Amy he couldn't see her anymore? Right. Like, I get that Amy would be in the best position, to be like, I smoothed it over. She knows Todd the best. He bought my explanation. He bought your explanation. That's why he called and apologized or whatever. But to me, it seems like if you were so worried, why didn't you just stop seeing her? Like, wouldn't you be like, okay, that was a close call. We got to quit. I don't know. Just that part doesn't really, but sometimes people's behaviors don't make sense. And that's just talking. It doesn't, in my opinion, I think that a lot of times when the prosecution lays out a motive, I think that I don't think it's not correct. I just think that people are so multifaceted that I don't think it's one thing that causes another human being for one human being to take another human being's life. I think it's layered. I think it's, most of the time, to me anyways, it seems like a lot of little things that have added up over a long period of time and resentments and stuff like that. But like when it's a situation like this, where the accused is, on trial for killing their spouse, usually it's small things over a long period of time. And I think that's a lot of the reason why most of the time it's not necessary for the state. They're not required to prove motive, because I think it's hard to prove something like that. I don't think it's as simple as they're making it out. If the motive, it started out with this affair, and that he was worried that she would leave him, and that when she left him, she would come after, half of the farm. So he killed her. Why not wait longer then to send Tristan into the barn or the shed to find Amy? Why not make sure that she was not alive? Why do any life-saving measures at all? You know what I'm saying? Why do that? Why would that be necessary? Why would you? Listen, we listened to part of that 911 call. And I'm going to tell you, listening to that 911 call versus listening to, I don't know, Sarah Boone, who absolutely was not doing any type of life-saving measures, and how out of breath he sounded. and how not out of breath Sarah Boone sounded. To me, it sounded like he was actually doing life-saving measures on her. So if he wanted her dead, why try to save her life?
Exhibit 110 is admitted.
Your Honor, permission to publish to the jury.
Yes.
Jerry, at the top it indicates the Gmail address, jerryfrazier70@gmail.com. Is that the Gmail account you set up?
Yes.
And it also indicates the Gmail account of amylynn5810@gmail.com. Is that the Gmail account that you would email Amy to?
Yes.
Now I'm going to scroll down here on this exhibit till the end, which would be the end of yours. Do you see at the bottom there, on November 10th, 2018 at 7:40 a.m., there was an email from Amy to you?
Yes.
And what does that email indicate or say?
It says, morning, I'm good all day, love you.
And at approximately, or at 7:50 a.m. on that same date, did you then respond from your Gmail account?
Yes.
And what did you respond?
It just says, morning, I slept horrible, must have slept too much in the late day yesterday.
And I'm going to go up to the same date at 8:04 a.m. Did Amy then respond to you from that same Gmail account?
Yeah, and on this one, I think I can't see it. It says sent from iPhone to November 10th down there, but there's nothing below it.
I think if you go to the next page.
So it says not really?
Do you see that other part? If you go to the next page, do you see it?
Oh, I'm sorry, it's on the bottom of the next page. It says, bummer, we'll take it easy today, take some NyQuil or Benadryl tonight. It says, bummer, we'll take it easy today, take some NyQuil or Benadryl tonight. You will sleep amazing. You probably don't feel any better since you didn't sleep good, I assume.
Now, if you go up from there at 8:06 a.m.,
Paul, with all the good points. Paul says they could have argued that Todd caught her emailing Jerry and became enraged, but never said a peep. I find that fascinating. That is also possible, right? But here's my thing with that, because people do that. There are people that are completely capable of seeing something like that, becoming overcome with rage. They're absolutely seething on the inside, but you would never know it from their demeanor on the outside. You would never guess. And I do find the people that are able to get that angry or feel that level of rage, and yet they can hide it, mask it so well, I do find that to be fascinating. But even still, this is the part that has never made sense to me. Why take her to the hospital? Why not make sure that she's no longer alive? That part never made sense. Now, that doesn't mean anything. I mean, it could be, part of some scheme of cover up, but it just seems like, I don't know, just seems like, why wouldn't you, like Sarah Boone, right? Sarah Boone heard George in that suitcase crying, pleading, begging to be let out, right? The last thing she says to him that we know she said for sure, because obviously she recorded part of it, and then it shuts off, right? She says, shh, right? And she never went back to that suitcase or checked on that suitcase until the next morning. And Call Me Sadie, okay. Call Me Sadie says, because Tristan was there. You're right, Tristan was there. But Tristan didn't go by himself on his own accord to go check on his mother. He was sent, right? So if you're Todd, and the whole reason behind the murder is you don't want her to survive, you're angry with her for having an affair, You don't want her to survive because she intends on leaving you, and you're concerned that she's going to take half of your beloved farm. Why not wait longer for Tristan to discover, to send Tristan to the shed to then discover his mother? Why? I mean, it would have had to come relatively quickly. Does that make sense? Oh, do you, Paul? Listen, a lot of people do. And I confess, I'm on the fence. I don't know. This is what I will say, because this is really all that we can know for sure based on watching the trial. Okay. I know that there are people that have researched this much more in depth, but at the end of the day, it's all going to matter. What's going to matter is what's presented to that judge, right? Whether or not Todd is going to be granted a new trial. And they show us, other than we can't see that. I don't think they publish pictures like of Amy's injuries, but what takes place in that courtroom is what the judge is going to base her decision on. So I know there's other evidence out there, but that people are aware of that I'm not aware of. But for me personally, just watching the actual original trial, I feel like there was reasonable doubt, and which means that I would have, if I were sitting on that jury, I would have had to find him not guilty. Okay. There's not guilty, and then there's actual innocence. And to me, they're very different things. For example, Casey Anthony, she was found not guilty. Is there anybody in this chat right now that believes that Casey Anthony did not actually murder her daughter? I mean, it's okay if you do, I won't judge you. But the majority of people believe that she is morally guilty, but she was found legally not guilty. She was acquitted. And for me, with Todd, I think that I don't know if I believe in an actual innocence claim, meaning that he absolutely did not have anything to do with it. I'm not sure. I'm not quite there yet, but watching his trial, I would say that there was reasonable doubt. And in my opinion, if I would have been sitting on that jury, I would have found him not guilty because of the reasonable doubt. So I think that's, that's where I'm at with it. I don't, I just, Preschool Granny, you think that Todd is guilty or Casey's guilty, or they're both guilty? I'm just curious. Yeah, I'm on the fence with between an actual innocence claim. That I can't say for sure. But as far as the legal proceedings go, when I covered this case, he had the presumption, in my mind, he had the presumption of innocence. This is one of the first cases that I did. Like I called it Notes from the Jury Box, where we only watched what was presented in court as if we were the jurors. And I remember thinking that there was reasonable doubt. Oh, gotcha. Gotcha, Preschool Granny. Yeah, I'm on the fence. But I think that when there is reasonable doubt, I do think, this is why I really want to get through this part of it and get to the actual hearings, because I want to see if I want to hear them, and I want to go over them with you, and I want to talk about what we think this judge is going to do, if she's going to grant him a new trial. All right, here we go.
Responded and wrote, "Not really."
Yes.
At 8:10 a.m., Amy from that same account then responded to you, and what did she write?
Says, well, that sucks. Wish I could be there to take care of you. I'm a pretty good nurse. I don't like to see you sick.
At 8:41 a.m., did you then respond?
I said, I'll get better.
And then at 8:49, what did Amy write?
Says, well, you better. I'm not ready to part ways yet, Fraser. Do you have anything to do today?
And what did you respond at 9:18 a.m.?
I said, just need to go.
And at 9:30 a.m., did Amy respond?
It says, I see, we'll rest up today then.
And at 10:12 a.m., did Amy then write you another message?
It says, you know what I'm doing today? Cleaning fucking like fixtures in the barn. WTF.
And did you respond at 10:14 a.m.?
I said, nice.
And was that the last time you communicated with Amy?
Yes.
Now, Jerry, you indicated that the day that this happened, you were in Anamosa.
Yes.
And you indicated that to the police, correct?
Yes.
Did you also give the police access to your Gmail account and your phone records?
Yes.
And you were in, as you indicated, you were in Anamosa all day.
Yes.
I have nothing further, Your Honor.
Cross-examination.
Your history with the Mullis farm goes back about 7 years.
Yes.
And I believe you said the frequency ranged from a couple times a week, maybe once a month.
Yes.
Were there times of the year when there were no pigs at the Mullis place that didn't require you to be there?
Yes.
What was there basically a repeating time of the year when that would happen?
Now, once they'd sold all their market hogs, there was a downtime to get the barn cleaned before new pigs come in.
Okay.
Oh, I'm so excited for this. Okay. So Sadie, call me Sadie, asked Clicker, if not Todd, then who? And Clicker said, Sadie, I have an idea, but you have to watch the bench trial. And then they have both agreed that we're going to watch this bench trial, and then we're going to see if they come to the same conclusion. And I'm super, super excited about this. Also, Carolina says, it makes sense to an extent. He was Googling what happens to women who cheat now and in olden days. So he was seething in his anger. Also, Tristan wasn't sent to the Red Barn immediately. No, Tristan was not sent to the Red Barn immediately. I believe that Amy had gone to go get this pet carrier, and some time elapsed. They're guessing about an hour. And then Todd says to Tristan, why don't you go see if your mom needs help or whatever? And so I was like, I was reading what the chat was saying. So also, okay, when they do an extraction, and this is important to remember, okay, when they did this extraction, I don't know if it's changed, but at the time when they did the extraction of Todd's iPad, they cannot differentiate between and let me think how I want to put this before I do that. Paul has a great point. The timeline, okay? That the searches were made before she started having an affair with Jerry. They were made in the January timeframe. That's right. That's another thing to keep in mind. So I think, but this is, I just want you guys to see what was presented at the trial. And then I want us to watch the bench trial together because, the defense is claiming that they have new exculpatory evidence and that he deserves, based on this new exculpatory evidence, that he should get a new trial. And this is what am curious to hear about it. So, but yeah. All right, let's keep going. And then we will listen to a little bit of Todd's own testimony. All right, here we go.
The relationship, you said, began to be a personal, physical relationship end of May, 1st of June.
Yes.
Maybe we'll stop here because, or with him, and then we'll just go on to Todd's, because you guys get the gist. But, okay, I think personally, this is just me thinking about things. If it were me, which it's not me, so it really doesn't matter, but we're having a discussion, so we're going to talk about it. I wonder if Todd is angrier now in this moment and in 2019 listening to this testimony than he was in 2018 when he may or may not have found out about this affair. And I wonder that because when somebody has an affair, the other person conjures up all kinds of things in their brain about what is going on between the two, between their spouse and this other person. And a lot of times it's so far from what is actually happening. But I think if it were me and I were sitting in Todd's position and I was listening to this man testify like he is and saying the things he's saying, it seems he's treating Amy. Jerry comes across as he wasn't invested in Amy, and it was nothing but physical for him. He didn't actually truly care about Amy as a person the way that probably Todd does. And that in and of itself would piss me off. That's what would make me mad, that you cheated on me with this person who does not give a rat's fat kneecap about you. Now, could that be that there is a level of distancing that's going on for Jerry because, this trial was streamed, and perhaps he's doing some distancing language because he's still married. And this must be a bone of contention, a sore spot in his current marriage. I don't know. These are all the things that you want to know about, but they don't actually come out. It just seems like, yeah, Sadie says, I think it would be worse having to listen to this with all of the true crime world watching. Yeah. I don't know. He just doesn't seem like he cares about her all that much. You know what I mean? Just makes me sad, that if Amy had an affair because she was seeking love and affection, she didn't get it from this guy. And that makes me sad for her. It makes me sad when people don't feel loved and cared for, and that's what they really want the most. All right. So now we're going to switch over. We're going to listen to Todd testify just a little bit. And then I'll let you guys go because it's getting to the 10 o'clock hour Central Time. So that means 11 Eastern. And I know it's a school night for everybody. So we'll listen for a little while. But I think you guys pretty much get the gist. And then we'll go start tomorrow at 10 a.m. Central Standard Time. And we'll start with, or maybe we'll go, let's do 9. Let's do 9 Central. Because I think it's a long day of testimony. And so we'll just go through the hearings each day, day by day by day, until we are through them. All right, here we go. Oh, bananas. I don't know why it didn't click over to share, but it didn't. So here we go. Now we're good. Sorry about that, you guys. Let's rewind just a couple of seconds. All right, here we go.
Seat. State your name, please.
Todd Michael Mullis.
Go ahead, counsel.
Mr. Mullis, where is your home?
Kind of northwest of Earlville on a farm.
Do you know what the mail address is?
Yes, it's 1722 255th Avenue in Earlville.
How old are you?
I'm 43.
And what's the extent of your education?
I graduated high school,
Where did you attend high school?
Maquoketa Valley in Delhi.
Tell us a little bit about your family. Are your parents still alive?
Yes, my parents, Leroy and Elaine, are alive. They live just north of Earlville. And I got two brothers and two sisters.
What are your brothers' names?
Mike and Pat are my brothers. And
Sisters?
Lori and Lynn.
Do you have children?
Yes, I have 3 children.
Names?
Tristan, Taylor, and Wyatt.
And tell us a little bit about your occupation.
I farm crops. We got a hog operation, a custom feeding operation, where we raise out pigs for a company, JBS now. I sold chemicals, farm chemicals on the kind of on the side, I guess you'd say, as a substitute to earn more money. And then we always helped each other, so we was busy.
And your brother Mike just testified that you help his farming operation, and he in return helps you.
Yes, and we also farm with my other brother Pat and Dad. We farm each other's ground. We go wherever it's needed, I guess.
Okay. Let's go back in time a bit, Todd. How did you meet Amy?
I met Amy at the Delaware County Fair in Manchester. I think it was in 2003, and I just met her at the beer tent or something like that.
Okay. So it wasn't like it was a blind date or?
No, it was not.
How long did the two of you date before marrying?
It would have been, I'd say, it would have been about 14 months.
And where were you living when you met her?
I was living at the same farm in where I'd live now.
Where was she living?
She was, at the time, was living in Marion or Cedar Rapids. I don't remember which one it was.
Was she employed when you met her?
Yes.
What was she doing?
She was working as, I think it was a bookkeeper in St. Luke's. I can't remember. She was changing stuff at that time. It's hard to remember exactly what position she held.
So when you got married, she moved into the family farm?
Yes, she did.
Did you own that property when you got married?
Yes, I did.
And what did you know about Amy's background in terms of where did she grow up? Was she a farm girl or a city girl or what?
Yes, I knew, she told me right away she grew up in Eldora on a farm, that her dad lived there. She didn't spend a lot of time talking about other places she was, other than growing up in Eldora and then ending up in Cedar Rapids area.
Now, what year did you get married?
In '04.
So at that time, did you have these hog buildings on the farm?
Not at the time, no.
Were you strictly a row crop operation, or did you have cattle?
At the time, we had dairy cattle at what I would consider my brother Mike's farm, and I was sharing the labor load there, helping that, and we had hogs on a bunch of different farms, but it was in small buildings, and then row crops.
Did Amy seem to settle in all right to farm life?
She seemed almost ecstatic about it. I mean, she wanted to move in right away, I guess, is what you'd say.
Do you have interest in outside of farming? In other words, sports, music, hunting, fishing, that kind of stuff?
Yes, I love to hunt and fish. In general, be outdoors. I mean, if it's tubing in a creek somewhere or canoeing or just various four-wheeling, anything outside.
How about Amy? What were her interests?
She liked the same things.
Okay, I have to say this because if I don't, it's definitely going to bug me. We, and by we, I mean all of us here at the ward, all of you guys, me included, we don't often get cases like this with, like, let's take the Wagners, for example, okay? Yes, they lived in the Midwest, right? I guess that's not really the Midwest where they lived, but they lived in a more rural, I should say, that'd be a better description. They lived in a more rural community, and there were people that were farmers around them. Is Ohio in the Midwest? I feel like it's not, but that's not the point. Anyway, but it was a very different kind of a case. I mean, 8 people were murdered, and the witnesses, the regular people witnesses, not the expert witnesses, not law enforcement, but just the regular witnesses that testified, they were very emotional when they testified. And they went through almost like all of the emotions during their testimony. There was grief and sadness and anger and, resentment. And then when George got on the stand, he was very monotone, very matter of fact. There were a few times that he got frustrated and it came across. But I think the reason that this testimony and this trial seems sort of slow at times is because it seems to me that like I said earlier, farmers, running a farm for profit, not just to feed you and your family, but a working farm where you raise, slaughter, and then sell pigs, or raise pigs to be slaughtered. That's a completely different scenario than, just somebody that's farming for themselves and their family. And it's I would imagine, an extremely stressful lifestyle. It's extremely stressful work, but at the same time, there's so much work that needs to be done that I feel like there isn't a whole lot of time for emotions. Like there's not enough hours in the day. You have to get all these things done and there's a lot of work that needs to be done. And so you don't have time to really sit around and think about things and think about your feelings and how certain situations or what somebody said to you earlier that day makes you feel. Like there's just no time for that. So you have to really like compartmentalize. And I think that is what's coming across when they're testifying, is the amount of compartmentalization that takes place. And that's why it's a little bit like dry. Also, I'm not super duper, and I wasn't then, and I'm not now, impressed with the defense attorney, with Todd's defense attorney. I think that it's odd the way that he questions Todd, the questions that he asks. As an attorney, it's your job to elicit a certain testimony from if you're going to have your own client on the stand, you have to elicit testimony from them. And the type of testimony that you want to elicit, in this situation where he is the defendant, is obviously, I loved and I cared about my wife. Yes, we had problems. Definitely. Every marriage has problems, but I loved her and I was willing to work through them. And he's not doing a good job of that. It's like he can't adjust to Todd's personality. And I feel like I'm screaming and my ears are so clogged. I'm so sorry, you guys. But it feels like he cannot like adjust his line of questioning to fit the person he's trying to elicit the testimony out of. And so I don't think it comes across that great. I think that's part of the problem. And also, the thing I also don't understand is if this evidence, this is going forward now to the appeals that he's already exhausted some of his appeals. And this appeal is based on an ineffective assistance of counsel appeal. First of all, an ineffective assistance of counsel appeal is an incredibly, incredibly difficult appeal to mount. It is very, very rarely successful. It's the burden of proof is so high, which, it is, it's high. And what I don't understand is if this is new exculpatory evidence, how does that bolster an ineffective assistance of counsel appeal? Because it's new. Now, are they arguing that at the time of the original trial that his defense team, there were things that they should have looked into, and if they had looked into it, then they would have seen this exculpatory evidence? Is that the argument? Because I'm a little bit confused on how new evidence, and I'm going to have to obviously pay extra close attention tomorrow, because I'm very curious about that argument. And I'm sure that they're going to lay it out in their opening statements, but I'm just, let me skip ahead. Let me see. Let me scroll through here and see. This is when it was the most watched. So let's see what goes on right here. See what he says here.
Did you do any of those searches?
The drowning ones were with the kids and swimming. We were swimming in the pond, and Tristan would say, I can float so much better than Wyatt, and then they looked it up when they got home.
And there was some other searches about chest wounds, gaping chest wounds, surviving in cold, start a fire, that kind of thing. What were those about?
That was actually, Taylor was going through a hunter education program, and it was an online thing, and she was studying for it, and they had these questions on the computer, and I think, it was Amy trying to help her out. It was all about a hunter education course.
Your Honor, may I approach?
Yes.
All right, so this is where he's asking him about the searches. And I will say this. Some of these searches, so you know when you guys go to, like, if you search, if your web browser is Google Chrome, all right, your Google Chrome is connected to your Gmail account. So if I were to pull up all of my searches, if I were to look at my history, every search that I did, whether it was on this computer or on my phone, because they're connected, not everybody's are connected like that, but you would be able to see what I searched, okay? What my browser searched, all right? So anybody that would have access to my computer or to my phone, right, they would be able to search and it would all come out under my Google Chrome because that's the browser that's being used. It's going to come back to my Gmail account. So one thing that is important to keep in mind here is, and this is always in all these situations, is that they can say what's been searched, but unless there is some unique way to log in, they cannot, and that no, they cannot say for certain who did the searches, is my point. They can say what was searched, but they cannot say for certain with any degree of certainty that this person is the one that did the searching. I mean, obviously they can narrow it down. Like, for example, if there were searches that were done during the hours where Amy was absolutely at work because she's got a time card and all that, that's one thing. And the searches were done when, let's say, it would have been school hours for the kids and they absolutely wouldn't have been home, then that would narrow it down to the most likely person who did those searches. But it's my understanding that a lot of these searches were done when everybody was home and that everybody had access to this tablet. So, I mean, look, I'm pretty sure that because of being in true crime and the things that I had look up sometimes, I'm pretty sure, like 98% sure that I'm on some kind of watch list. And I'm sure that I'm being watched because they can't quite figure me out. Like on the one hand, I'll be searching stuff related to true crime. And on the other hand, like yesterday, there's somebody that's in Nosferatu and I could not, his voice was so familiar to me, but I could not place his face. So I went down an entire rabbit hole only to find out that the reason his voice was familiar to me is because he was the voice of Creature in Harry Potter. Okay. So I'm sure that whoever's monitoring my searches is like super annoyed and doesn't exactly know what to do with me because my searches are, like all the true crime things and weird movie, random movie rabbit holes. I looked up if there are vaccines that actually prevent certain diseases. And I mean, I just look up all kinds of stuff. Oh, I'm sure, Violet, I'm sure they've got my photo on a corkboard. I'm sure they're like, okay, yeah, on her Chrome account, her avatar is a Capri Sun drinking monkey, but she has this other account on the YouTubes where she uses where she uses a picture of her actual self. So they're probably both right there. Me and the monkey. We're probably both on that corkboard. All right, here we go.
Todd, I'm going to hand you a document which has been marked as Defendant's Exhibit NO. Would you take a look at that?
Okay.
All right, so we heard him explain the searches. Let's move forward to the next
On the
most
front page
watched.
up at the
He was just kind of speechless.
Was he
Interesting, yeah. I had to go to
Hold on.
those. And as we were doing that, me and Tristan were standing in front of the window at that time, and I go, well, that pet carrier over there. And he goes, yeah, I wonder what happened. That's what Tristan, and it was in a conversation. Well, what happened? We didn't know. Well, maybe she couldn't get it out of there. I don't remember which one of us said those words, but we were having a conversation of, why isn't it over there? And then Tristan said, you want me to go check it out? And I said, yeah, why don't you go over there and check it out? If she might not have been able to get it out of there.
Okay. So he went on his own?
Yeah, and then he went over to see what happened.
Okay. Well, he went over there to see
whatever.
what went on with the pet carrier?
Yeah, if she couldn't get it out, he was going to grab it.
What did you do after he left the building to go do that?
I was just finishing washing my hands up. I had to slip my boots off, slip onto my other boots, and then I proceeded to go outside.
What happened when you went outside?
I had just stepped out for a second, and Tristan yelled.
Did you go to him?
I looked over and I was kind of like, what, you know? And then he yelled really loud again, and then I ran over there.
Where was Tristan in relation to the shed? Was he inside, outside?
He was yelling out of the opening. He was just outside the opening yelling at me. And then as I was running over, he was just standing just inside the door.
And did he say anything to you about what was upsetting him?
I don't remember him saying anything. He was more or less, Mom. He was just kind of speechless.
What did you see when you stepped in through that door?
Well, when I stepped in, I initially looked at Tristan, and I looked over, and I seen Amy hunched up, face down, laying next to the door, leaning against the door.
Did she have this corn fork stuck in her?
Yeah.
What did you do?
I more or less just dove down by her. I put my head down. I was like, Amy, Amy. I was yelling at her.
I know, Sadie. I know it's going to be hard for you. It's so weird for now that you've changed your name, but listen. I know that it's going to take a lot of willpower for you not to go and start day one of the bench trial. And if you do, I won't be mad. If you just must see for yourself what is going on, I will not blame you at all. The only thing that's keeping me from doing that same thing is that I know if I don't get off of here shortly and get my butt to bed, I'm not going to be up in time. And that's the only thing keeping me from doing that exact same thing. All right, here we go.
Trying to get her attention. I didn't know what to think. I was just looking at her, and I picked her head up a little bit, and there was just nothing. It was no response.
So what did you decide to do?
I just wanted to help her. I just wanted, let's go to the hospital. Is there something wrong? Right now, I just reacted.
Did you pick her up?
I started to pick her up. I went under her, like her armpits, and I was trying to lift her up, and that fork handle was jabbing in the toe out the caging. And then I realized, hey, this ain't gonna work. So I just set her down more or less a little bit in my arm. I just reached over, I pulled the fork out, I tossed it, and I got underneath of her, and I told Tristan, go get the truck, we gotta go.
And he did?
Yeah, he took off, and then I tried to get her up and get her out of the barn.
Did she ever become responsive at all?
No.
How did you get her placed in the truck then? How was she situated?
Well, I got her out of the barn, and it was kind of hard. She was like a noodle. And I got underneath her, and I carried her like this, and Tristan was standing by the truck and get the door open, and he, I told her, get in there, and you gotta help me get her in. And he sat down in the seat, and I go, you gotta hold her, because I can't get her in there decent, you know? It was hard to get her in the door. And then I set her on Tristan, and he was holding her up in the seat. And it was hard to get her legs in, and then I closed the door, and I ran around the truck and took off.
At any point, did you think about just letting her there and calling 911?
I did not. I didn't. I'm a doer, I guess. I wanted to help. Let's go.
Did you call 911?
Yeah, as soon as I got in the truck, out of the driveway, I called 911.
All right. This is important, okay? And I assume you guys want to hear my opinion, which is why you're watching, because if you didn't want, if otherwise you could just watch this trial yourself. I mean, the playlist is on law and crime. It would seem to me that if you're a person who doesn't want your wife to survive something that you just did to her, knowing where you're located and knowing that it's going to take time for 911 to arrive, right? It's actually, I think this is what he was thinking, that it would be faster for him to get in the car and drive towards the hospital or, you know, the emergency room than to call 911 and have 911 be on the phone with him. And yeah, immediately they're going to be dispatching the police and emergency services. It depends, you know, sometimes sometimes always the fire department is dispatched because they always have paramedics that are also firefighters. But then there are sometimes when cities have like a privatized ambulance service, and that's when, you know, those paramedics arrive, and that's all they do. They're paramedics. But at any rate, they have to leave from where they're at, and then they have to get to you. And so if I lived out in the middle of nowhere on a farm, right, I would think it's quicker for me to get in the vehicle and start heading towards the hospital. That's what I would think if I wanted the person to survive. If I didn't want the person to survive, then I might have just called 911 and just waited there. So it seems like, to me, Todd wanted to get Amy help. And if his end goal was for her to die, calling 911 would have sufficed. It wouldn't have been, nobody would have said, well, why didn't you drive her there yourself? They would have been like, he called 911, he was trying to get her help, right? Only Todd would know that the reason he didn't get her in the car and drive her himself is because he was trying to, you know, waste time, for lack of a better word. But it sounds like he's trying to help her. Why would you be trying to save somebody that you killed, or that you wanted dead, I should say? It doesn't make any sense to me. Although I have to say, murder is not a rational process. It's not something people do when they're thinking rationally. So there's that component to it as well.
And that's the call that we listened to. Did the deputies that described what they saw when they arrived, did they accurately describe what was happening there?
Yeah, my memories is such a hyped up moment. I would agree with that.
Thank you, Clicker, because I go through a lot of you guys have no idea. Like, I question myself quite frequently. I worry that the thoughts that are in my brain, that then come out of my mouth, those are the thoughts that won, because there's always thoughts swimming around up here. The thoughts that win are the ones that come out of my mouth. And I always worry that I don't make sense, or that I'm not coming across the way I intend to. So I appreciate that, Clicker. Thank you.
I believe one of the witnesses described you as being excited.
Yeah, I was very excited. I think I had adrenaline pouring out my ears. I was in reaction mode. I wanted to get her to the hospital. Let's go.
Michael Krogman testified this afternoon that he kind of took over with Tristan at your request.
Yeah, Michael and Tom showed up, and everybody showed up, and it was just kind of everybody showed up at once. And I think it was Michael and a couple of the EMTs. They said, you better turn him away, he better not look at this. So Michael grabbed him and took him over there, and then one of the EMTs says, why don't you go over and comfort your son? So I went over by Michael and Tristan, and at that time, I remember telling Michael, hey, he's got blood on his coat, maybe put your coat over him, and Michael took his coat off and put his coat on him so he wouldn't see that. And then I thought of my other kids, and I was thinking of, oh my God, they're home alone. And I wanted to call Mom and go over and make sure, watch the other two kids. And then it was just back and forth. I didn't really know what to do.
And then you followed in another Krogman's pickup, followed the ambulance into the hospital.
Yeah, Tom was there, and he said, why don't you hop in with me and let's go.
When you got to the hospital, were you allowed to be in and around Amy, or were they working on her?
No, not at first. They were working on her. I just remember being there was a waiting room there, and some friends were there with me, and I think it was Tom and Carol were in there with me, and we just waited.
At some point, I assume medical people informed you that she had passed.
Yeah, I don't know how long later. I think it was Gerst came in and told me that, and there was a priest, and they were all there. And
by that time, had your family arrived?
See, now I find this particular part of the testimony really compelling, because one thing that I'm not seeing, which is usually, something that's indicative of a lie, is these extra details. Yes, Donna Adelson, I'm looking at you, like when you told the judge today, or Wednesday, excuse me, I played it today, that you're a righty, and that you were brushing your teeth with your right hand while holding onto the sink with your left hand to brace yourself. Yeah, those kind of extemporaneous details that don't really matter and have nothing to do with anything. Like that. I don't hear that in the things that Todd is saying. It's like, to me, the way his testimony comes across is that he remembers parts, but not like a ton of detail. And to me, that's indicative of somebody who just saw something really horrific, and your brain will just block stuff out. I mean, that's what your brain does. It's there to protect you. And so to me, it seems like, especially this part, hold on a second. Let me rewind it just a tiny bit. Hold on. this part.
Medical people informed you that she had passed.
Yeah, I don't know how long later. I think it was Gerst came in and told me that, and it was a priest. And
I find it interesting the words that he chooses to use here. He says, he came in and told me that. He doesn't say, he came in and told me she was dead. He doesn't use the attorney's word. He didn't say, yes, they came in and they told me that she had passed away. It's, in my mind, the way that it comes across is that it's something that he still hasn't actually accepted yet, and he doesn't want to. He doesn't use the words, and I just think that that's interesting. And it's hard not to take into consideration other trials, other defendants that have taken the stand in their own defense, and testified to events that have happened. It's hard not to do that, but it just seems like in other situations where there's something about the way the person testifies that they just come across as so disingenuous, and that they're trying to get sympathy. And what I've noticed is if he were acting, and believe me, even his attorney is not great as a job as he did do. I think it's just basic attorney protocol, I guess is the right, I don't know, it's right, the right word, but you know what I'm saying. I would think that it's like basic attorney practice 101. If you're going to put your client on the stand, which is always a risky move anyway, that you want to prepare them to testify. And what I notice is that Todd doesn't actually very often engage the jury. He's looking at his attorney. Doesn't really ever look over at the jury. And also, if, as the prosecutor in her opening statements alleges, if he put on this great show, right, that this was his moment to shine, and he acted, every bit the part of a bereft, grieving husband, why is he not doing it now? It doesn't make sense. I don't know. I'm just still so on the fence about this one. And this is one that's kind of stuck with me, that I've always kind of been on the fence with. And I've been secretly keeping an eye on it. And Criminality messaged me the day that the bench trial started to tell me about it, because it was supposed to happen a couple of months ago, and then something happened anyway, and it was put off until now. And I forgot about it, but Teresa didn't. And she reminded me, and I appreciate that, because she's the one that got me interested in this dang case in the first place.
they were all there. And
By that time, had your family arrived?
Oh, wait, hold on. I missed this. Violet, that is so sweet of you. Violet said, I like the way you tell us your thoughts. Jinlu, it's never biased or condescending. It also makes us feel comfortable saying how we feel in chat. I love that. Thank you so much. I'm so glad that you guys feel comfortable to have these discussions in chat. This is just my opinion. And I'm coming into it, because I make my opinions based on my experiences, just the same way that you do, but my experiences are not your experiences. And a lot of times I learn from you guys. You'll say something about some testimony or something that will make me take a moment and think, that's actually a really good point. And so thank you for that, Violet. I appreciate that. And this, super important. Paul says, the guy literally was at the scene and drove Todd to the hospital. How is his testimony not among the most relevant as to Todd's state of mind, demeanor, and commentary? I couldn't have said it better myself. Why wasn't he put on the stand? I mean, that's important. I don't know why he wouldn't. I would want him on the stand. And frankly, I might pull a Sarah Boone and write a letter to my attorney if he didn't, I know that it's their job to prepare, but I would have raised a stink. Why, I can't imagine why he wasn't put on the stand.
Yeah, I can't remember. Honestly, I think
By either side.
Mike was there maybe. I just can't remember exactly who was all showing up.
So let's think about this, okay? If everything is as you can announce other YouTubers, KD. I don't mind that. Go right ahead. I don't care about that kind of stuff. Unless you're going to say something bad, then I have to be like, please don't say negative things about other YouTubers or other channel holders in the chat. Cause I don't need that negativity in my life. Cause you know how that goes. Never goes good for the creator whose chat it was set in. But if you're saying you watch it on another creator, that doesn't bother me. I don't get mad about that. This is what I don't understand. Okay. So if everything is as the state alleges and Todd was putting on a show, wouldn't the best person to be testifying to that be the guy that took him to the hospital and the guy that was around, that intercepted and where's that like Paul said, the guy literally was at the scene and drove Todd to the hospital, how his testimony is not among the most relevant as to Todd's state of mind, demeanor, and commentary, right? So, okay, if everything is as the state says, then this is the person that you'd want to call, right? Because Todd would be able to, Tom would be able to testify as to Todd's demeanor. And if it seemed, genuine, yada, 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 right? Okay. So why didn't the state put him on? Well, the only thing that makes sense, in my opinion, is that they did speak to Tom and that Tom didn't say that Todd was putting on a show, right? So then why wouldn't the defense call him? To me, that just seems lazy, or I don't know. Okay, I watch Kendall. You guys would be amazed at the YouTubers I watch. I go all over the place doing also watching all sorts of things because I feel like it's good to hear from other people sometimes. You know what I mean? All right, here we go.
At that time I remember there was a bunch of people coming in.
Out at the
I think actually I changed my mind. I think we're going to leave it there because I think we're good. I think you guys have the gist. I think we're ready to listen tomorrow. And also, I have a feeling that as I hear the testimony again at the bench trial, I will start remembering other things from the original trial. And I know that Clicker and I hope Paul will be there. And you guys that are really super duper, you guys are, have seen the bench trial and you guys are really caught up with all of it, that, if you see things that you think need to be pointed out and whatnot, that you will in the chat. I would greatly appreciate that. I love that you guys are always engaged and I want you to be. So I think that I think we're ready to hear tomorrow. And I think we're ready, and it's getting late. It's 10:30 now, my time, which means it's 11:30 on the East Coast, and it's a school night. It's time. So I'm going to, I'll probably do it in the morning. I'm kind of tired. So in the morning before I go live, I'll make a playlist of the Todd Mullis trial that I covered with criminality, Rottweiler investigations, and Schmida. And then tomorrow morning, be ready. We're going to start bright and early, 9 a.m. Central Standard Time, 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. And we'll start with day one. And the benefit of being behind is that we can skip through the hour and whatever that they take for lunch and all of those things. So I will see you guys, hopefully all of you tomorrow morning for the bench trial. Thank you guys so very much for being here. If you haven't done so, please give your girl a thumbs up. Do it for the YouTubes, do it for the algorithm. I would appreciate it. And I will talk to you guys tomorrow. Bye.